What happens when the hopes and dreams you have for your child begin to unravel, when they make choices you don't understand or find themselves in trouble? Like many parents, you may try to step in and fix it. That's exactly what today's guest did on Grieving Out Loud when she found out her youngest son was experimenting with drugs.
The turning point for me that senior year of high school was his best friend came to me and said, he is in trouble. That was another burst of my bubble. And at that point in time, immediately I knew I have to get him into treatment.
As she watched her son struggle with substance use disorder for years and go in and out of about 24 treatment centers, Barb McAllister tried everything she could to help him find sobriety.
Looking back on it now, I can see that that was necessary for me because when there's nothing else to do, all there is to do is to surrender.
After years of trying everything, Barb decided to take a different approach. One she says made a huge difference in her relationship with her son and even with herself.
When I started really listening to my son, and I read from some expert that, when you're dealing with an addict, you don't ask the question, when are you going to be sober, which is the question I asked for years. It's tell me about your pain. And I finally got to a place where I could start to listen to my son's pain.
In this episode of Grieving Out Loud, Barb shares her sometimes painful journey and what addiction has taught her about life and learning to love unconditionally.
The big surprise so far has been, I thought all along I was going to be the person. I would shine my light so that he could find his way back home. And ironically, what I think's happened is he's been the one to help me grow.
There is a version of the addiction story that rarely gets told, although we do try to talk about it here on this podcast. It's not the one about the person who is struggling, but the one about the person who loves them, the one who stays, the one who keeps showing up, even when showing up costs them something, the one who has to figure out in real time how to hold on without losing themselves. Today's guest knows that story from the inside. Barb McAllister spent 26 years at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, rising to Director of Air Quality for the Northwest before founding Thrive Coaching and Consulting, where she now works with leaders, managers, and individuals navigating change and adversity. But it was her son's addiction that brought her into a world that she hadn't chosen, and eventually into a quiet ministry of walking alongside others who know what it means to love someone they cannot necessarily save. She came to believe that the connection is the antidote to addiction, and that staying in connection without losing yourself is an art and a hard-won education. Her personal essay, The Empty Chair, tells the story of the mother's side. It is not a story with a neat, tidy ending. The grief is real and ambiguous, and the path through is neither straight nor swift. The transformation she found in the middle of it all is exactly why she is here to talk to us today. I am so honored to welcome you, Barb McAllister, to Grieving Out Loud.
Thank you, Angela. I'm really happy to be here.
This is something that we talk about on this podcast. I talk to a lot of parents who've dealt with the loss of a child to substances. I talk to parents who've dealt with a battle such as you have with your son, but we don't talk a lot about the losses that pile up in that story. And I want to start really with the beginning of your story with your son, and you're working in government. I mean, now you're doing something completely unrelated to
Yeah.
that, and it's because of your life experience. Give me a little bit of your background.
Yeah. Well, I had one of those lives that I thought was really great. I was one of those people that sent Christmas cards that said how wonderful everything was in my family. Now, I had a full-time job, 3 kids. And what happened was it was an ordinary day, and we got a call that night from the police, and we were living on an island. And they basically said, we stopped your son, he's drunk and he has pills in the car. And I think he was 17 years old at the time, and he was a junior in high school. At that was the beginning of the burst of my bubble, my sort of fantasy bubble about what a great life I had. Yeah, I had a really good job, life was full. And that was the beginning. And at that point in time, uh, immediately what we thought about was, well, what can we do to help him fix this problem?
Right. I think that's a completely normal reaction. We just wanna fix it, and if we have the resources and we know how to research and fix other things. I know that's how I felt about my daughter initially. I mean, I can relate to what you're saying. I thought there's gotta be a solution here. When she started getting into some trouble, I was like, "Okay, how do we fix it?
Yeah.
Where's the easy fix?" Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And the next thing was his senior year, I got a call from the guidance counselor. And they said, but his behavior is really strange. And other things were happening too. I can remember having friends over for dinner and he's just talking. It doesn't sound like him. He's just sort of spaced out and weird. But the turning point for me that senior year of high school was his best friend came to me and said, he is in trouble. That was another burst of my bubble. And at that point in time, immediately I knew I have to get him into treatment. And within days, he was in his first of many following treatment centers. And that
So,
was
from about
agonizing.
age 17 on, you're
Mhm.
dealing with this, and your other children, how were they impacted or affected by this? I mean, like you said, you had this picture perfect life. You sent out the Christmas cards, as many of us
Yeah.
did. I also felt that same way for quite some time. Like, look at these great kids I have. I have a job that I love, and my life wasn't perfect by any means, but it could certainly have looked that way. Just as we see so many people on social media, it looks that way to
Yeah.
someone on the outside.
Yeah. Yeah. I have, my son is the youngest of three, and his siblings are a bit older than him. And they were both, my daughter was off in college, and my other son he was on his way. So I think, what I've observed in the family over the years is everybody handles it differently. For example, my other son, the older son, he's now a doctor and he's got a specialty in addiction medicine. That kind of says something about what he's trying to do in his life. But I remember when he went off to college, he said to me, I have to put him in a compartment. I'm so upset about this. He's better looking than me, he's smarter than me, he's more talented than me. And I have to put him, but he basically said, I have to put him in a compartment. I just can't. And my daughter she was just kind of gone in college. But over the years, everybody's had their moments of withdrawing from him totally, being really angry, trying to reach out. It's been all over the map for all of us.
So you went through this cycle of getting him help. He's better maybe for a little while, and then he relapses. How many times did that occur?
Oh, well, I think I actually not 100% sure about this, but I think he's been in 20 treatment centers. And
Okay.
along with that, a lot of detox places before treatment, many, many relapses. His whole senior year, he was in treatment and then he was in a halfway house for kids who had substance abuse problems. And when he came home, which was at the end of the year, the first thing he did, I still remember we were on the tennis court, and the first thing he said to me is, well, I'm not planning to stay sober. And at that moment, I'm like, oh, wait a minute here. You have to be sober. You have no other choice in your life. You have to be sober. Well, that's what I used to think. I used to think that the antidote to addiction was sobriety. I'm not saying sobriety isn't good. I think it is good.
Yeah, of
But,
course.
over time, I began to realize that there's actually a more powerful antidote to addiction, and that's connection.
Yeah, and I've heard that saying before that really connection is the solution to addiction because people who are suffering from substance use disorder feel so disconnected from everyone. And people get angry and they get upset and they withdraw and they punish and they shame and they may try manipulating. I mean, I'm sure you've
Oh,
been
yeah.
through all of those things. If he's been
Mhm.
through treatment 20 times, tell me about the tactics that you used that didn't work.
Oh, boy. Well, the first thing was I suggested multiple things. He was in a lot of therapy, all the treatment centers, 12-step meetings. You know, when he was younger, we grounded him from the car. I mean, um, basically, the wilderness trips, pilgrimages. I mean, every spiritual stuff, because he is a spiritual kind of a guy. But everything I could possibly think of is what I suggested. And then ultimately, I finally got to the point um, where I realized nothing I'm doing here is working. Something else is required.
How long did it take for you to get to that point where you sort of threw up your hands and said, I've tried this, I've tried that, I've tried, I mean, I'm sure you did research and reading and people suggested things and experts suggested things. How long did it take before you were at that point?
Yeah, I've really thought about that, 'cause I'm writing a book about this journey, and it really took me about 10 years, um,
10
to get
years.
to yeah,
It's
to
a long
10 years
time.
of fixing. I went through that period of trying to fix and manage and manipulate and control. That went on for quite a while, because he was still young when this started, and
Of
I think
course.
it's kind of tricky when your kid's, like, under 25. It's different now, my son's 35, but it just seems different when the person is younger and their brains haven't formed, and, but ultimately, um, you know, I think I had to have time after time after time of new revelations, which took me lower and lower and lower. You know how they say in AA, you hit bottom? Well, I hit bottom.
If you're a mom who has lost a child, I want to tell you about something close to my heart. Some dear friends of mine, mothers who have also lost children to fentanyl poisoning or overdose, are hosting the Sisters of Strength Warrior Moms Retreat this October 9th through the 11th at beautiful Wildwood Hills Ranch in St. Charles, Iowa. This is a weekend created by grieving mothers for grieving mothers. You'll spend time in nature, ride horseback, hike, paint, and create keepsakes in memory of your child, all alongside women who truly understand the depth of a mother's love and the weight of her loss. This weekend isn't about forgetting, it's about remembering with love, honoring our children's legacies, and discovering that even in loss, we rise together as warriors, as mothers, and as sisters. Please join us. You'll find the link and all the details in the show notes of this episode. I hope you'll consider giving yourself this gift. Tell me what you mean. What was bottom for you? And then
Lot of eh, yeah, I had several things that occurred in the journey. One of the big ones was when, he revealed he was taking heroin, and that was when he was in college, and, alls I could think about that was, like, the worst possible thing I could ever think of,
I
and
I agree
I
with
s
you. I
I
mean, I found out after my daughter's death that the drug she was using was heroin. We were a few
yeah,
days away from holding an intervention, and I was horrified,
yeah,
horrified. I think for people our age, I think it's maybe more common, but for older people, it was just like the worst thing you could do. Like, who would do that?
yeah. It's like the picture I had in my mind of him, you know,
Yes.
dirty, his hair's all messed up. He's got a needle in his arm. He's slumped over. He's shuffling. And that was a bottom for me. I had several of these. It's these times where things were so bad for me personally that I didn't want to go on. I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna navigate this in my life. And I had other moments of like that
And that's
too.
an understandable emotion, don't you think, for a parent to feel like, I can't, I mean, I have to constantly worry about this person and nothing is working. And how do I continue on? I think that is a normal response.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it does seem normal. And it felt like how they described the dark night of the soul. It was just like I
Yeah.
was just sitting in darkness and despair. Um,
Yes.
and
I
then
understand that feeling. And so,
in
what I also think is that there are so many losses. You lost your hope for your son's future because we all as parents, even though we want our kids, to find their own path and to figure out maybe what is best for them and where
yeah,
they shine and where they excel. When someone is addicted to substances, they're not excelling at anything. I mean, they're just and so all of your dreams for your kids, even if you were going to let your kid figure out their own dreams, that's not materializing.
yeah, yeah. You know what it feels like to me? It's just like a heavy weight. I don't know. I don't know what
Mhm.
else to do. So a number of bottoms like that took me to that place. And, looking back on it now, I can see that that was necessary for me because when there's nothing else to do, all there is to do is to surrender. And then that's when a lot of shifts took place in me. And one of the shifts, a big shift that kind of changed my whole trajectory when I was in this surrendering and dark place was like, I realize I have a goal for him, and that is to be sober. And I've realized it's not my business to have a goal for him, that what I'm looking for, actually, the outcome I'm looking for is to have a loving relationship with him and healthy boundaries. That shift, among many other shifts that went through in my mind, like the shift from sobriety is the antidote to connection is the antidote, that helped me begin a kind of a new path through the darkness. And basically, when I said to myself, okay, there's nothing really I can do here, but there is a way I can be.
I wanna pause on that because you said something I think quite profound there. Instead of doing, you went from doing to being, and there is a difference in that.
There is a huge difference in that. And of course, I didn't really know how to be with
Well,
him,
sure.
an
You're
addict.
at
I
your wit's
just,
end. I mean, you were literally at your wit's end, right?
yeah. And so the big turning point for me was in 2018. So that's what, 8 years ago now.
Mhm.
And that's when that's what I read about in the story. It 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 it's the first time I really showed up. I was visiting him in treatment, and I had visited him in treatment many other treatment centers, but it was the first time that I went into treatment. I didn't ask any questions. I didn't suggest anything. I simply listened. And he was not in a good spot in treatment. He was over medicated and he was out of it. And I had gotten so triggered before the visit because he sounded terrible. But as I broke out in hugs, I was flying to visit him. And I went through this whole physical experience as I was learning how to shift into who do I need to be here? And that visit was really difficult for me because he was so out of it. I was over medicated on Western drugs, I think. Um, but I showed up really differently. And from that point on, my journey with him has been different. And then one of the next things I did is I did what I called a listening tour. Is one of the things I realized, when I started really listening to my son, and I read from some expert that, you know, when you're dealing with an addict, you don't ask the question, when are you going to be sober? Which is what the question I asked for years. It's tell me about your pain. And I finally got to a place where I could start to listen to my son's pain. And I did this listening tour. I visited him. He was in a sober house by then. And I visited him like every month or 6 weeks. And I simply stayed with a couple of days at a hotel and we drive around or hike around and I just listen to him. And I started to really get to know the person. And in that journey, I realized, gosh, he is nothing like I thought he was. He he's one of those people that I hear a lot about on your show. This he was a star athlete, he was a gifted musician, he seemed really popular. That is not what his experience. He did not feel like he fit in. And I never got it as a mother. I never got it until later now in these years where I started listening.
Wow. That is amazing. And I think it is hard for a parent to witness their child's
Oh,
pain
oh,
because we want to, our whole job is to protect them from pain, to stop the pain, right?
yeah. It was agonizing, for me to realize how much I had really not gotten him. And he actually did tell us when he was young that he had social anxiety, but I never believed it because he didn't believe it.
Because he
It's like,
kind of overrode it. He was so
oh,
outgoing
yeah.
and all of these things.
Yeah,
You
I
thought maybe
overrode
he was
it.
just making that up. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
And so you get to really know your son. He's going through, he's in sober living, he's gone through another treatment. It's hard not to place conditions on somebody, anybody that we love, right? Like, I mean, our love is unconditional as a parent, but it's so hard when they're using substances. If they relapse and go back to using again, you feel like it's just such a failure at that point. So, how do you change your perspective from looking at relapse as a failure to continuing to show up for your son unconditionally
Yeah.
without expectations for sobriety or recovery?
I, that, and that's a really hard one. The first thing I had to do was change my whole attitude about relapses, which is, and I used to think they were horrible. My son has had many relapses. I
Society
have,
thinks they're horrible.
yeah,
Society
right.
judges the
Yeah.
person who's suffering from substance use disorder. I've seen it, I've heard it, I know it. So
Yeah.
that's just how we're conditioned too.
Yeah. Yeah. But I shifted my attitude about it. It's like, no, it's part of the growth journey. And I got to a place, I, I also experienced him being homeless in this 18-year journey with him. And that was really hard too. But I
Mhm.
got to a place where I said to myself, I can't really trust him because he's an addict. Um, and he obviously has lied. Um, but I can trust his process. I think that's a bit of a spiritual leap, to say, I have to trust his process because I don't have anything else to hang on to. And if relapses are part of his process, then so be it. Now, are they easy? Never, never. They're still not easy. When he relapses, I'm like, oh, darn it. But I don't go into a spiral by any means anymore.
It is amazing that he's still alive in
Oh,
today's drug
oh,
landscape.
it's totally amazing that he's still alive. He's had multiple overdoses. And one of the things I'm writing about in my book is that guy, he's had an army of angels. He has had even street when he was homeless, the fellow street people that he was with and hanging around with basically told him, "You don't belong here. You need to get off the street." And he had multiple people who helped him. I feel really grateful for that. But yes, he's had a lot of overdoses. He's been, in the ER multiple times. One time he overdosed in the bathroom of an Indian restaurant in Seattle and they had to break the door down and they gave him Narcan can. It's, I don't know why he's still alive it, but he is resilient. I'll say that.
I mean, I think we distribute naloxone at Emily's Hope, and I always say we just want to keep them alive, people who are using, until we can get them the help that they need.
Yeah.
But what if they never get the help they need? What if, I mean, it's that question I don't like to think about because I want to think that people are treated for an overdose and they get the help and they find recovery. And while it may not be a perfectly straight road, for the most part, they do much better. And that's not necessarily the case.
No, I think that was one of the things I had to accept. I had to accept that he could be gone tomorrow because of
Yeah.
all the drugs he uses. He could get sober, or he could be in and out of sobriety, which is what he is right now.
How do you live with that without feeling like a dark cloud is following you around everywhere you go?
Well, part of how I live with that is by trying to make the lemons of my journey into lemonade. It's talking to other parents. I've been in Al-Anon recovery for over 20 years, and I, this is what, I sponsor people, I help people. I talk about my journey. I've given 3 sermons at my church. I talk about the journey openly, so that, because I know the isolation, I'm sure you do too. And, so that if people can hear a story told, you know, to hear the story, then they might reach out and come out of their isolation, which I think is a huge problem for people like me. And I
It
used to be
is.
isolated.
People feel judged and people feel as if they would tell the truth about what's happening with their loved one, they would be judged and ostracized and that no one else is experiencing this situation and we know that's simply not true.
Yeah.
I'm sure when you've spoken about it, people come up and say, "I've been through something similar."
Yeah. So I think for me, it's important for me to tell the story to help other people in the same situation. And that's how we deal with it. And I also have other people to live for. I have 2 grandchildren now. I have my 2 older kids, and I have a big family. I have people to live for, and I, you know, that keeps me going too.
Right, right, you're not alone, it's not just you and your son, which might be more difficult even. But what is it, do you think, that has kept your son in your life? Is it that moment where you stopped and said, "I'm just gonna listen now. I'm gonna stop trying to fix, stop judging, stop fixing, just listening." And were you able to keep that up?
Well, I've had my moments. I kept going in and out of everything. But I think when I heard that, from Gabor Mate and this other guy who did a podcast, all that, um, that connection was the antidote to addiction. It just struck me in the heart. And I just think as a mother, if I just can't imagine a life where I don't try to stay connected with my son.
Where you cut
Um,
him off because he continues to use?
right.
Right.
And the
Right.
question the question for me became, how do I stay connected with a person who's in and out of sobriety who may never get sober? That was the that's the thing I sit with all the time because he's not always in contact. He'll lose a phone. He hasn't been homeless for a while, but he went through a period of being homeless. How do you stay connected with somebody? But when I did one of my sermons, I thought about like an image that's found everywhere in mythology. And it's just of the mother who stays. I think that the mother who stays despite how agonizing watching the suffering of her kid is. And I can't tell you how or when, but I just got to that point where I love that boy man now unconditionally, and I'm gonna stay and I'm gonna take care of myself. That was the big piece. I do have a healthy boundary with him.
Yeah,
I
what
won't
is your
have him
boundary?
I won't have him live with me. Um, I don't give him cash. Those
Mhm.
are 2 big things. Um,
Like, you'll feed him or clothe him, but
yeah,
not give him
I'll
cash. Yeah.
yeah, I'll take him out to dinner for sure. Um, yeah, and I'll buy him birthday presents and Christmas presents, but I I make it a priority to take care of myself, so I can be with them because that it feels like kind of an advanced state. There's there's nothing to do really anymore, but there is certainly a way to be. And, to be, I have to, I have to stick with my meditation practices and yoga. And it's, you know, a lot of conversations I have with him are challenging. You know, it's, it, and can I be with that and be okay? And that, yeah, I'm getting better and better at it.
Takes practice, is what I hear you saying.
As,
And tell me about your essay, The Empty Chair. What was your message in that?
yeah. So it's been great to really start focusing on writing about this thing because it's allowed me to step up from the day to day of it to really look at the arc that I've gone through as a mother. And it's what I've observed in my journey with my son is in the beginning it was doing, fixing, controlling, managing, manipulated. Then I got to the place of surrender. There's nothing I can do that's going to get him sober. And then it's to the place of, well, who am I going to be in this matter? Who am I going to be in relationship to him? So that's kind of the arc of the story. But the story is ongoing. It doesn't have a happy ending, but it has a really bright light in it right now because I've realized something amazing. First, he has been a great teacher for me, the greatest teacher I've had this lifetime. If it weren't for him, um, I have learned so much in my journey with him. I don't necessarily wish this kind of journey on people to learn and grow, but has been my journey. And I've become kinder and I understand better people who don't fit into society. I'm certainly more humble. Um, and the big surprise so far has been I thought all along I was going to be the person, I would shine my light so that he could find his way back home. And ironically, what I think's happened is he's been the one to help me grow. Um, it's because of my journey with him, I had to turn inward. I had to own my shadow. I had to really look at myself, and 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 I think I've become a much better person because of it. So where I was starting out thinking I'm helping him, actually he's helping me. Now, do I support him? Yeah, I hope I'm helping him too. But the point of the story is it's the big reversal. If you do your own work, you can be surprised. So I was looking for his transformation, meaning be sober. And
Mhm.
instead, I got my own transformation.
That's an amazing thing, and I completely understand what you're saying because I do think while I would get my daughter back in a moment if I could, her death truly did transform me in ways that are positive, right? And
Yeah.
you don't want to think something positive can come out of something so negative. But also, I think you have given your son an incredible gift of unconditional love because so many parents follow what people tell them to do. Cut them off, don't enable them. If they're homeless, don't let them, don't buy them food. Don't get let them hit rock bottom and then they'll want to change. Well, we all know rock bottom is death today. And you have shown your son unconditional love. You have boundaries, but not many people in their lives get to know unconditional love. They don't.
Yeah. I think I had to really learn what it was through him. And also a really big surprise for me is that I've learned to hold the grief I have. And, you know, I call it ambiguous grief because physically he's still on the planet. It's not like the grief you have where your daughter is gone. Um, but I've learned to hold the grief and really acknowledge it. You know, it's, it's heartbreaking when he's not at the moments that matter most with my family. It's
Mhm.
heartbreaking
Mhm.
for me. He is missed. And that's why I call my story the empty chair. It's like his chair is empty. And that's agonizing. But along with holding the grief, I hold the gratitude. It's like, wow, thank you so much. It's like, I am such a better person today than I used to be. Um, And I
Right. Things
know,
aren't things aren't how you want them to be, and so often in life they aren't, right? Whether it's with
right.
a child or with something else, things just we cannot necessarily mold life to be what we want it to be. It's the acceptance of what life is right now in the moment. That acceptance, whether your child is gone, whether your child is still using substances, or whether they're in recovery or whatever it might be, you have to accept that this is the way it is right now. And it's
Yeah,
so hard for people to do that because we always want it a different way.
yeah, yeah. And I've kind of given that up.
Mhm.
It,
Sounds like you
I've kind of,
have.
I've given up.
Yes.
It's like,
And it's grief that's not acknowledged in our society. It's grief that goes kind of under the radar. Nobody walks up to
Mhm.
you and says, "Oh, I'm so sorry that your son isn't living the life you hoped for. I'm so sorry that
yeah,
he wasn't at the last family Christmas." Nobody does that for you.
yeah, yeah. And it, in and of itself, it can be isolating. And it's interesting too in my life. One of my sisters has advanced dementia. So I've also experienced the ambiguous
Yeah.
grief. Her, she's still here
Uh-huh.
physically, but you know, she's really not here. And so, yeah, I have experience with it. And, for a long time, I didn't even know I was grieving. Um, and then I think I probably stumbled across something that I read about ambiguous grief and, oh my gosh, that's what I have. It's like, but yeah, it is isolating because what I've noticed is over the years, most people don't ask me about him anymore. Some still do for sure, but most people don't. And it's kind of what I think I put in my story. It's almost like he's forgotten. And I will never forget him. It's
Right. And neither will the rest of your family. And quite frankly, he set the course for your other son's life, who became a physician in addiction medicine, right? And who's probably helping and saving people because of what your family experienced. So the things that come out of the friction that we experience in life, the negative things, can often, help others along the way.
yeah.
Are you ready to protect the next generation from the dangers of substance use? Emily's Hope has created a comprehensive K through 12 substance use prevention curriculum designed to educate, empower, and equip students with the tools they need to make healthy choices. Our age-appropriate lessons start in kindergarten and build through high school, using science, real stories, and interactive learning to help kids understand their bodies, brains, and risk of drug use. We're already reaching thousands of students across multiple states, and we're just getting started. Visit emilyshopeedu.org to learn more and share our curriculum with your school administrators and counselors. At Emily's Hope, we believe prevention begins with education. Let's work together to keep our kids safe. After working in the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency for 26 years as a supervisor, manager, and director, Barb decided to switch gears and became an independent coach, consultant, and trainer. She has now created her own business, Thrive Coaching and Consulting. You can find out more information by checking out our show notes. And while you're there, we'd appreciate it if you just take a moment to rate and review our podcast. And please share it with a loved one who may find it helpful.
Most of my coaching business has actually been coaching leaders, people who want to be leaders. Um, and, you know, most of my work with people like myself, with a journey with a relative who's an addict, has actually come through recovery, 12-step recovery and sponsoring people. But I am starting to coach some people. And, you know, I like to think, I guess the target for me would be people who were at the place I once was, wits end. That's the best way to describe it. I don't know what else to do. And that's the place that I want to work with people going forward. Um,
What would be your biggest advice to somebody who has a loved one, whether that be a child or a spouse or who is struggling right now in the moment, who is where you were, a decade ago or however long it's been now, what
Yeah.
advice do you have for them?
Mm. My advice is to get support, whatever that looks like. I mean, for me, Al-Anon has really been great support for me. Doesn't work for everybody. I mean, there's so many different ways people can get support. And the support is critical because of the isolation, I know you just know that too, but the isolation that comes from embarrassment and, shame. Like I've got a kid that isn't doing well. So this too, I would say is, I mean, if I were working with people, I would say pause, take a look at what's really going on. And then this actually would be coaching. What is the kind of person you want to be in this going forward? If it never gets better, that's actually kind of a coaching question. But that's what I like to help people with. It's like you're so focused on what's wrong, to get people to start looking at, okay, we know what you don't like here, but what do you want? That's where I made the shift from if he needs to be sober to I'm going to create a relationship with him that's loving and that has a healthy boundary. So
No matter
that's
what. No
no,
matter
no
what.
matter what, no matter what. It doesn't mean I don't have my moments with him where I'm like, I have to take a break. I just, I have my moments for sure. But by and large, I'm on a path.
Right. And anyone who is struggling with someone using, you have to set those boundaries and say, okay, this is enough for me today. I have to remove myself from the situation for a while, but I'm not removing myself forever. I think
Right.
that's the key.
That is the key. And sometimes, the way I stay connected with him is I just, I pray for him. I send him good vibes, electronic, telepathically. It's, sometimes he hasn't had a phone. I mean, long periods of time he hasn't had a phone, so I can't text him. But you can still keep the person in your thoughts and mind, and that's what I try to do.
And let me ask you this. We all want a happy ending. Hollywood has conditioned us to let's have that happy ending where we can wrap things up and put a bow on that. And you say your story does not have that happy ending. Can you still be happy without it?
Yeah, but yes, that's the big revelation, and I think that's what eludes people when they're in the throes of it. Like, it's in recovery. What they talk about is finding serenity, and that's really one reason I want to tell the story is so people can realize that even if circumstances are difficult for you, you can still have a great life and find peace and serenity. And that's really kind of the message in this whole thing. But you have to learn to be with it. And that's the thing. You have to learn to be with what might be a really messy ending or no resolution. But then again, it might have I will never give up hope that I know that's one of the words you used. I'll never give
Mhm.
up hope that he will find his place. That's what I really want for him now. Find his place and live a happy life.
And there's
I
still
hope he
time. As long as someone is alive, there is hope. And so,
yeah.
what I hear you saying is that you were able to, when you talk about surrender, I also think about detachment. You were able to detach from a certain outcome that you previously had to have. You were able to maintain a relationship with your son who may be using and who may not be at certain periods of time, depending on what was happening with him. But that doesn't mean that you've given up hope for a better future for him. You just aren't attached to it that that has to happen.
Right. And what that better future could look like will likely be very different than the future I once envisioned for him
Right.
when he was a star performer, this and that, and and
Right.
I'm really okay with that now. But years ago, I wouldn't have been okay with it. I had to go through all this mess to get to this place.
Of course, there's no easy path there because we all see the potential in our kids, right?
Of
And we want
course.
them to live up that potential, to be the best version of themselves. But that's not up to us. It's not. And we aren't puppet masters and we can't control the people around us, even our own children. And I think what you've learned is such a valuable lesson, and the fact that you can articulate it and pass it along to other people is a great gift.
Thanks. I hope so.
I
I
hope
hope
so
so.
too. And I think I'll be very anxious to read your book when it comes out. I hope that you'll get a copy my way.
Oh, I sure will. Yeah, I'm in the process now of writing it. So I've got a lot. That's one thing I did in my journey. I started writing, and hey, I came from the government. I used to write government emails. Okay, you had the drift
Boring.
there. Boring. um, I'm like, okay. I started writing a blog, and then I just started writing. Especially at the start of the pandemic, I started writing a series of turning points that I went through with my son. And now, so I have a ton of written material, and now I just have to put it all in a book.
Yeah,
Um,
you're just like me. I've got this blog I've been writing since my daughter's death, and I just got to get it all in a book. I've been writing the transitions and running a charity, and I'm finding it's taking a lot longer than it should. But good for you writing that down and recognizing, identifying those turning points because that will help others.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's been really healing too. So I guess that's another piece of advice. Find something that's an outlet for yourself. And I was surprised to find that writing has been an amazing outlet for me.
Me
That's,
too. Once I get it on paper, I feel like, oh, I've lifted this weight from my heart and my mind once it's on paper. Well, thank you for working on that. I look forward to
Mhm.
reading the final version when you're done with it. And thank you for sharing your son's story and what you've been through with our listeners and viewers. I think it's so important that people understand the main thing I think it does is it destigmatizes the person suffering from substance use disorder because
Yeah.
it's still your son. He's still a person. You mentioned he's been your greatest teacher, even
Hmm.
though it's been a difficult
Hmm.
lesson. I
Hmm.
think we can't just discard people as we so often do in this society because they have an issue like substance use disorder. And the more we talk about it, like we're doing on this podcast, the more we humanize people like your son and others.
Yeah. That makes me really happy. Yeah. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, of course. Thank you for being here. And thank you for listening to this episode of Grieving Out Loud. If you or someone you know is struggling with substance use disorder, please don't wait to seek help. Your life matters. You can find a list of helpful resources on our website, emily'shope.charity. We've also included a direct link in the show notes. On our website, you can also check out hundreds of other Grieving Out Loud episodes, learn more about our K-12 substance use prevention curriculum, and stay up to date on the latest news surrounding addiction, mental health, and the fentanyl epidemic. Thank you again for taking the time to learn more about this important topic. Until next time, wishing you faith, hope, and courage. This podcast is produced by Casey Wanenberg King and Kaylee Fitz.